All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, chances are you've at least heard of it, maybe even flipped through it.
Oh, for sure.
But we're going to go deeper. This isn't just like another personal finance book. It's really about like shifting your whole perspective on wealth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a total reframing. And I think that's why Rich Dad, Poor Dad has been so popular since it came out way back in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
It really challenges the way we traditionally think about money.
Yeah. And it all starts with this super clever idea.
Hmm.
Imagine growing up with two dads and they're both giving you financial advice.
Interesting.
Okay, so one dad, the poor dad, he's that classic, hardworking guy, educated, believes in job security, but he's always like struggling financially.
Right.
Then you got rich dad, who's like the entrepreneur, focused on building assets, financial freedom, that whole mindset. Like,
Very different approaches.
totally. It's almost like having these two voices, like battling it out in your head. Which one would you listen to?
It's a great way to illustrate the contrast between these two mindsets about money. And I think that's what Kiyosaki does so well. He uses that setup to really unpack why some people become financially successful, while others, even if they work just as hard, they don't.
Yeah. Now, the part that I think really throws people for a loop is what Kiyosaki says about assets and liabilities.
Oh, yeah.
He actually says your house, which like most people think is like their biggest asset.
The American dream, right?
Exactly. He says it could actually be a liability. How is that even possible?
Well, Kiyosaki really challenges those traditional definitions, right?
Mhm.
For him, an asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. So think like a dividend-paying stock, a business that generates income, something like that.
Gotcha.
And then on the flip side, a liability is anything that takes money out. Could
Mhm.
be a mortgage, car payments, or even, just like your daily coffee habit.
So even if your house like goes up in value, if you've got that mortgage, the property taxes, repairs, and it's like constantly draining your cash, it's acting more like a liability than, something that's building your wealth.
Exactly. And this
Huh.
gets to the core of what Rich Dad is all about. Acquire assets, minimize liabilities.
It's that simple.
Well, in theory, at least.
And this is where I think Kiyosaki gets really passionate, right? It's this whole idea of financial education. Like, why do we spend years learning algebra, but nobody really teaches us how taxes actually work or how to, like, analyze a stock?
It's true. Kiyosaki really believes that traditional education often misses the mark when it comes to, like, equipping us for the real world of money. He's a huge advocate for financial literacy, understanding things like financial statements, tax strategies, different ways to invest. All that stuff, he says, is crucial for building lasting wealth,
Mm.
not just, living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. I love how he calls that out. Like, imagine how much more confident financially we all be if we had learned this stuff early on. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be life-changing.
Absolutely. It's about giving people the tools and the knowledge to be in control of their own financial futures.
So speaking of being in control, let's talk about risk. I mean, most of us are wired to avoid risk. It's scary.
Right.
But Kiyosaki, he kind of turns that on its head. He says risk can be a friend, not an enemy.
He's not saying go out and gamble recklessly, but he argues that informed risk-taking, understanding how to manage risk instead of being terrified of it, that's a key part of building wealth. The more you know, the better you are at spotting those opportunities that other people miss because they're too afraid to take a chance.
So it's like he's saying, hey, knowledge is your shield when it comes to financial risk. It's not about being fearless. It's about being informed.
Exactly. Someone who understands debt, how it works, how to use it wisely, they might see a mortgage not as this huge burden, but as a tool to actually build wealth over the long term. That's the power of understanding your finances when it comes to risk.
That's a great point. So it's not about avoiding risk altogether. It's about learning how to use it to your advantage.
And Kiyosaki even breaks it down further, right? He talks about good debt versus bad debt, which is a concept a lot of people don't really think about.
Right.
Good debt, like that mortgage on a property that brings in rental income,
Yeah.
that can actually increase your net worth over time. Bad debt, like high-interest credit card debt, that just drains your resources.
That makes sense. Okay, so knowing how to handle risk can open up some cool financial doors, but Kiyosaki, he doesn't stop there. He actually questions this whole idea that having a job, a traditional job, is the safest way to be financially secure.
Yeah, he kind of flips that on its head, right?
Right.
He argues that relying just on your paycheck, that can actually be more risky than, having different ways to bring in money. I mean, think about it. If you lose your job, that's it. That's your only income gone.
All your eggs in one basket, kind of scary.
Exactly. Kiyosaki is all about building multiple streams of income. especially what he calls passive income, money you earn without actually actively working for it at that moment.
Which is where things like investments come in, right? Rental properties,
Yeah.
stocks that pay dividends, even like creating and selling online courses.
Exactly. It's about having a system in place where money's coming in from different places, so you're not always trading your time and energy for every single dollar.
Okay, and this is where I think the rich dad philosophy starts to get really, really interesting. It's about changing that mindset from working for money to having your money work for you.
Yeah, it's about taking control, not feeling like you're stuck in that rat race. And Kiyosaki actually gives you some pretty concrete steps for how to do this, like focusing on getting those assets that generate cash flow instead of just piling up things that cost you money.
So, like, instead of buying a fancy new car that loses value the second you drive it off the lot, you put that money towards a rental property that pays you rent every month.
Right. Or instead of running up credit card debt on stuff you don't need, you use that money to buy stocks in a company that pays you dividends.
Choices, choices, they make a big difference in the long run. And it all starts with that mindset shift that Kiyosaki's talking about.
For sure. It's about spotting opportunities where other people just see problems, thinking like an entrepreneur, even if you don't own a business.
I mean, for someone who's just starting out, like, where do they even begin? What are some practical things they can do?
Well, one of the first things Kiyosaki always recommends is tracking your money. Like,
Mm.
really get a clear picture of where your money is going, what you're spending it on.
So budgeting, basically.
Yeah. But it's not about depriving yourself. It's about being aware and in control. Once you see where your money's going, you can make smarter choices about how you spend and how you invest.
And there's so many apps and tools out there now to help with that. It's easier than ever to get started.
Oh, absolutely. And then once you have that budget, you can see where you can cut back on things you don't really need and free up more money to put towards those assets that generate income.
Makes sense. Kiyosaki also talks a lot about just continuing to learn about personal finance, right? Like he's a huge fan of reading, going to seminars, finding mentors who can share their knowledge.
He believes that financial education is never really finished. There's always more to learn. And the more you know, the more comfortable you'll be making those financial decisions.
So find those rich dad figures in your own life, people who are already successful and can give you good advice.
Could be a financial advisor, a successful business person, even a friend or family member who's really good with money. Don't be afraid to ask for help and learn from them.
Now, something else that really stood out to me was Kiyosaki's focus on teaching these things to kids. He thinks financial literacy should start early.
Yeah. He argues that if we teach kids about money, about investing, about starting businesses, we give them a head start in life. They can break that cycle of financial struggles that sometimes get passed down through families.
It's like equipping them for the future. Not just saying, go to college, get a good job, but giving them the knowledge and skills to make their own way.
It's about changing how we talk about money as a society, making it something that everyone understands and is comfortable discussing.
You know, Kiyosaki's book, it really is full of these ideas that make you think. And even if you don't agree with everything he says, it definitely pushes you to look at money differently, to think about your relationship with money in a new way.
It's a book that can really make you think about your own life, your own choices, and inspire you to take action. And it reminds us that being successful with money isn't just about luck. It's about making smart choices and taking control.
So we've really dug into a lot in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, from like rethinking what assets and liabilities really are to that whole idea of financial education being so important
Yeah,
and how having multiple ways to bring in money can really change things.
definitely. And we talked about how powerful it can be to shift your thinking, going from working for money to having your money work for you. That can be huge.
But I think one of the biggest things I take away from this book is that it's not enough to just like read it and nod your head right. You got to
Yeah.
actually do something.
Oh, absolutely. Action is key. Kiyosaki, he's not just talking theory. He actually gives you real strategies that anyone can use. And one of the simplest but most effective, he says, is to just start keeping track of your money. Where's it coming from? Where's it going?
That's where a budget comes in, right?
Yep. But think of it more like an awareness tool, not about depriving yourself. It's about seeing clearly so you can make smarter choices about where your money goes.
And luckily, there are tons of apps and stuff out there now to help with that, so it's pretty easy to get started.
So true. And then once you've got that budget going, you can look for places where you can cut back, maybe on things that aren't super important to you. That frees up more to invest in those income-generating assets we talked about.
Yeah, maybe instead of eating out 3 times a week, cut back to once and put that extra cash toward buying some stock.
Right. Or maybe don't get a new phone every year,
Yeah.
hang on to that one a bit longer, and put that money toward like a down payment on a rental property.
Choices, choices, little things add up over time. Kiyosaki also talks a lot about always keep learning when it comes to money, right? He's all about reading books, seminars, finding people to mentor you.
He's a big believer that, you never really stop learning about finances. There's always something new to discover. And the more you know, the more confident you'll feel making decisions with your money.
Find those rich dad types in your life, the people who are already doing well and can show you the ropes.
Yeah, could be a financial advisor, someone who's really successful in business, even a friend or family member who just has a knack for handling money. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Learn from their experience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about. Remember at the beginning, we asked, if you had those two dads, one all about job security, the other about financial freedom, who would you listen to?
It really makes you think about what you believe about money, what's important to you.
And I think the answer isn't just picking one dad over the other, it's taking the best of both. Poor dad taught us the value of hard work, being responsible, that kind of thing.
Right. And then Rich Dad showed us how powerful it can be to understand finances, be entrepreneurial, and build a life where, money works for you, not the other way around.
It's about finding that balance that works for you, creating your own path to success with money.
So as you go on your own financial journey, remember those key lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Don't be afraid to question what everyone else says. Get that financial education, be smart about risks, and never stop learning and growing.
And the most important thing, take action. Even small steps, if you do them consistently, can make a huge difference. So think about it. What's one small step you can take today to start thinking more like Rich Dad? Maybe it's making that budget we talked about, picking up a book on investing, talking to someone who's good with money. Whatever it is, make that commitment to yourself and start building the financial future you want. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We'll see you next time. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep on diving deep.